There comes a moment, usually somewhere in your 50s, when you realize that the future is no longer an infinite horizon. The question shifts from what will I become to how well will I live the years I have left. And in that moment, most people do exactly the wrong thing. They look for a single answer, the right diet, the perfect supplement, the exercise protocol that will somehow reverse the changes they feel accumulating. But the body does not work that way. It never has. What if the secret to aging well is not finding the one thing that works, but understanding how dozens of small choices, woven together over decades, actually build the architecture of a long life? That is what we are going to explore today, not as a prescription, but as a framework for thinking about your own future. You are listening to the Longevity Library, where we archive the wisdom of healthy aging. The architecture of a long life. Understanding how daily choices shape our years. There is a question that eventually arrives in every thoughtful person's mind, usually sometime after 50, when the future becomes something you measure not in endless possibility, but in the quality of the years that remain. The question is simple but profound. What actually determines how well we age? For much of human history, this question was answered with resignation. Aging was simply what happened, a slow and inevitable decline written into the human contract. You could hope for good luck, perhaps, or thank your parents for good genes, but there was not much else to be done. The body would do what the body would do, and you were mostly along for the ride. That understanding has shifted dramatically in recent decades. Researchers who study the science of aging now speak in terms that would have seemed impossible a generation ago. They talk about health span rather than just lifespan, the number of years lived in good health, not merely the total years accumulated. They talk about biological age versus chronological age, recognizing that two people born in the same year can have bodies that function as if decades apart. And perhaps most importantly, they talk about the extraordinary degree of control we actually have over how we age. This is not to suggest that aging itself can be stopped or reversed. The biological processes that unfold over time are real and universal. But the rate at which they unfold, the manner in which they express themselves, and the quality of life we maintain along the way appear to be far more malleable than was once believed. What determines these outcomes is not a single magic bullet or a secret protocol available only to a fortunate few. It is, instead, the accumulated effect of thousands of small decisions, repeated day after day, year after year, that together build the architecture of a long and vital life. The purpose of what follows is to explore that architecture, to understand the principles that support healthy aging, to examine why they matter, and to consider how they might be woven into the fabric of daily living. This is not a prescription or a protocol. There are no strict rules to follow, no foods that must be eaten or avoided, no exercise regimen that works for everyone. What there is, instead, is a framework for thinking about aging that can help you make your own decisions with greater clarity and confidence. The body as a system of systems. To understand how aging works, it helps to think of the human body not as a single entity, but as a collection of interconnected systems, each supporting and depending on the others. There is the cardiovascular system, moving blood and oxygen to every cell. There is the musculoskeletal system, providing structure and enabling movement. There is the nervous system, coordinating action and processing information. There is the endocrine system, producing hormones that regulate countless functions. There is the immune system, defending against threats both external and internal. There are perhaps a dozen major systems in total, each with its own components and requirements, and they do not operate in isolation. When you take a brisk walk, for example, you are not simply exercising your legs. Your cardiovascular system responds by increasing heart rate and blood flow. Your respiratory system adjusts to bring in more oxygen. Your musculoskeletal system coordinates the movement of dozens of muscles. Your nervous system processes balance and spatial information. Your endocrine system releases hormones that affect energy availability and mood. A single activity touches nearly every system in your body simultaneously. This interconnectedness has profound implications for aging. It means that interventions affecting one system inevitably ripple outward to affect others. It also means that the overall health of the body is determined by the health of its weakest system. You can have excellent cardiovascular function, but if your musculoskeletal system is deteriorating, your mobility and quality of life will suffer. You can have strong muscles, but if your nervous system is compromised, you cannot coordinate them effectively. The goal of healthy aging, then, is not to optimize any single system in isolation, but to maintain the integrity and function of all systems together. This is why approaches that focus narrowly on one aspect of health, diet alone, or exercise alone, or supplements alone, often produce disappointing results. The body expects and requires a comprehensive approach that addresses multiple systems simultaneously. The principle of use it or lose it. Among the most consistent findings in aging research is that biological systems deteriorate when they are not regularly challenged. Muscle tissue that is not loaded with resistance will atrophy. Joints that are not moved through their full range will stiffen. Cognitive abilities that are not exercised will decline. Metabolic pathways that are not activated will become less efficient. This is not a matter of opinion or interpretation. It is a fundamental characteristic of how living organisms work. The evolutionary logic behind this is straightforward. The body allocates resources where they are needed and withdraws them from areas that appear unnecessary. Maintaining tissue requires energy. And from an evolutionary perspective, energy spent maintaining and used capacity is energy wasted. If you are not using your muscles, your body reasons. You do not need them, and the resources that would have gone to muscle maintenance can be redirected elsewhere. This creates what researchers call a use-dependent maintenance system. The signals that tell your body to maintain a tissue come from the act of using that tissue. When you lift something heavy, the mechanical stress on your muscles triggers a cascade of cellular responses that ultimately result in protein synthesis and muscle maintenance. When you walk or run, the impact and loading on your bones stimulates the cells that maintain bone density. When you challenge your brain with novel information or complex problem solving, you promote the growth and strengthening of neural connections. The implication is both encouraging and sobering. It is encouraging because it means you have direct control over many aspects of your aging process. The choices you make about physical activity, mental engagement, and daily challenges directly influence which systems your body maintains and which it allows to decline. But it is sobering because the opposite is also true. The systems you stop using will begin to deteriorate, and this deterioration can happen more quickly than most people realize. Studies of bed rest, for example, show that healthy young adults can lose up to 5% of their muscle mass per week when completely inactive. Bone density begins to decline after just a few weeks of reduced loading. Cardiovascular fitness drops noticeably within days of stopping regular aerobic activity. The body does not wait patiently for you to return to your previous habits. It begins adjusting immediately to the new reality of reduced demand. This is why consistency matters more than intensity. A moderate amount of regular activity, maintained over decades, produces better long-term outcomes than sporadic bursts of intense effort followed by long periods of inactivity. The goal is to send your body a consistent message. These systems are needed. Please maintain them. Movement as medicine. The human body was designed for movement. This statement is so obvious that it almost does not need stating. Yet its implications are often overlooked in modern life. For the vast majority of human evolutionary history, movement was not optional. Finding food, escaping danger, building shelter, traveling from place to place, all required physical effort. The bodies we inhabit today are the products of that evolutionary history, shaped by millions of years of near-constant activity. The modern environment has changed that equation dramatically. Most people in developed countries can meet all their basic needs while moving very little. Food appears in stores and restaurants. Shelter is provided by buildings that require no construction. Transportation happens in vehicles that carry us effortlessly from place to place. Work, for many, happens while sitting at a desk. This is a remarkable achievement of human ingenuity, but it creates a fundamental mismatch between the bodies we have and the lives we live. The consequences of this mismatch are visible in the patterns of chronic disease that characterize modern aging. Cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, osteoporosis, sarcopenia, and many other conditions are rare or absent in populations that maintain traditional active lifestyles. They become common only when physical activity drops below some threshold that the body requires for maintenance. What makes movement so powerful is that it affects virtually every system simultaneously. When you walk, you are not just exercising your legs. You are improving blood flow and oxygen delivery to every tissue. You are stimulating the release of hormones that regulate metabolism and mood. You are loading your bones, signaling them to maintain density. You are challenging your balance and coordination, maintaining the neural pathways that support these functions. You are reducing inflammation, improving insulin sensitivity, and supporting the health of your blood vessels. No single pharmaceutical intervention comes close to producing this range of benefits. The type of movement matters less than the fact of movement itself. Walking is excellent and accessible to most people. Gardening provides movement with the added benefit of purpose and outdoor exposure. Dancing combines physical activity with cognitive challenge and social connection. Swimming offers movement with reduced joint impact. Resistance training provides the specific loading that maintains muscle and bone. The best form of movement is the one you will actually do consistently. There is, however, value in including different types of movement. Aerobic activity, anything that raises your heart rate and keeps it elevated for a sustained period, supports cardiovascular health and metabolic function. Resistance activity, anything that loads your muscles against gravity or external weight, maintains muscle mass and bone density. Balance activity, anything that challenges your ability to maintain stability, reduces fall risk, and maintains the neural pathways that support coordination. Flexibility activity, anything that moves joints through their full range, maintains mobility and reduces stiffness. A week that includes all these elements provides more comprehensive support for aging well than a week that focuses narrowly on any single type. But again, consistency matters more than perfection. A daily walk, maintained year after year, produces more benefit than an elaborate exercise routine that lasts 6 weeks and then stops. The metabolic foundation. Every function of the body requires energy, and the systems that manage this energy, collectively known as metabolism, play a central role in how we age. Metabolism is not simply about burning calories or maintaining weight. It is the process by which food is converted into the energy and building blocks that every cell requires to function. When metabolism works well, cells have what they need when they need it. Waste products are cleared efficiently, and systems operate smoothly. When metabolism becomes disrupted, the effects ripple through every aspect of health. The central player in metabolic health is a hormone called insulin. Insulin's job is to help cells take up glucose from the bloodstream and use it for energy. When you eat carbohydrates, they are broken down into glucose, which enters your blood. Your pancreas releases insulin, which signals cells to open their gates and let glucose in. This process keeps blood sugar within a healthy range and provides cells with the fuel they need. This system works beautifully when it is occasionally challenged with meals and then allowed to rest. But the modern eating pattern, constant snacking, frequent meals, and diets high in refined carbohydrates and sugars keeps insulin levels elevated much of the time. Cells eventually become less responsive to insulin's signal, a condition known as insulin resistance. The pancreas responds by producing even more insulin to force the gates open. This compensatory cycle can continue for years, with insulin levels climbing higher and higher while blood sugar remains normal. Eventually, the pancreas may be unable to keep up, and blood sugar begins to rise. This is the path to prediabetes and type 2 diabetes. But even before blood sugar reaches diabetic levels, the metabolic disruption caused by chronic high insulin has consequences. High insulin promotes inflammation, encourages fat storage, and may accelerate cellular aging. It is associated with increased risk of cardiovascular disease, certain cancers, and cognitive decline. The good news is that metabolic health is highly responsive to lifestyle choices. Physical activity is one of the most powerful interventions because contracting muscles can take up glucose without needing insulin at all. A single bout of exercise can improve insulin sensitivity for hours or even days. Regular activity produces cumulative improvements that keep metabolism functioning well. Dietary patterns also matter enormously. Meals that combine protein, fiber, and healthy fat with carbohydrates slow the release of glucose into the bloodstream, producing a gentler insulin response. Foods that are less processed generally have this effect naturally, while highly processed foods, even those marketed as healthy, can spike blood sugar and insulin rapidly. Perhaps most importantly, allowing periods without food gives the metabolic system time to rest. When you are not eating, insulin levels drop, and the body shifts into a different metabolic state where it burns stored fat for fuel. This alternating pattern of feeding and fasting appears to support metabolic health in ways that constant grazing does not. The traditional pattern of 3 meals a day with no snacking between, which was normal for most of human history, provides this rest period naturally. Modern patterns of constant eating do not. The cellular view, moving from the level of organs and systems down to the level of cells, reveals another dimension of aging. Cells are the fundamental units of life, and the health of your tissues and organs depends on the health of the cells that compose them. Over time, cells accumulate damage, lose function, and eventually reach the end of their natural lifespan. How this process unfolds has a major influence on how you age. One of the most important cellular processes related to aging is called autophagy. The word comes from Greek and means self-eating, which is a reasonably accurate description of what happens. Cells have internal quality control systems that identify damaged components, proteins that have folded incorrectly, organelles that are no longer functioning, waste products that have accumulated, and break them down for recycling. This cleanup process clears out cellular debris and provides raw materials for building new, functional components. Autophagy appears to decline with age, and this decline may contribute to the accumulation of damaged cellular material that characterizes aging tissues. When cells cannot clear out their trash effectively, that trash interferes with normal function and can even become toxic. Restoring or maintaining autophagy is therefore an important goal for healthy aging. What triggers autophagy? The primary signal is nutrient scarcity. When cells sense that energy is abundant, they remain in growth and repair mode, focused on building rather than cleaning. When energy becomes scarce, they shift into maintenance mode, ramping up autophagy to recycle damaged components and generate internal resources. This is another reason why periods without food may be beneficial. Fasting creates the nutrient scarcity that signals cells to clean house. Exercise also stimulates autophagy, particularly in muscle tissue. The stress of contraction creates damage that must be repaired, and the cellular response includes increased autophagic activity. This is part of why regular physical activity maintains tissue health. It triggers the maintenance systems that keep cells functioning well. Another cellular process with implications for aging involves the ends of chromosomes, structures called telomeres. Chromosomes carry your genetic information, and their ends are protected by telomeres, which act like the plastic tips on shoelaces, preventing fraying and deterioration. Every time a cell divides, its telomeres shorten slightly. When telomeres become too short, the cell can no longer divide and enters a state called senescence, where it remains metabolically active but stops replicating. Senescent cells are not simply idle. They secrete inflammatory signals that affect surrounding cells and contribute to tissue dysfunction. The accumulation of senescent cells is one of the hallmarks of aging and is associated with many age-related conditions. Telomere length is influenced by both genetics and lifestyle. Chronic stress, poor sleep, unhealthy diet, and lack of exercise are all associated with shorter telomeres. Conversely, stress reduction, regular physical activity, and certain dietary patterns are associated with longer telomeres or slower shortening. The effect sizes are not enormous. You cannot grow your telomeres back to youthful length through lifestyle changes, but the differences are meaningful enough to influence health outcomes. What these cellular perspectives reveal is that aging happens at a level you cannot directly perceive, but it is nonetheless influenced by the choices you make. Every bout of exercise, every period without food, every night of good sleep sends signals to your cells that shape how they function and how well they maintain themselves over time. The nutrition paradox. Few topics generate as much confusion and controversy as nutrition. Dietary advice seems to shift constantly, with yesterday's superfood becoming today's villain and today's forbidden food reappearing tomorrow as essential. This confusion is understandable, but it obscures a remarkable consensus that actually exists among researchers who study nutrition and aging. The consensus is this: the healthiest dietary patterns across populations share certain characteristics, regardless of which specific foods or cuisines they feature. They are built around whole foods rather than processed products. They emphasize plants, vegetables, fruits, legumes, whole grains, nuts, seeds. They include moderate amounts of animal products if desired, but do not center meals around them. They limit added sugars and refined grains. They include healthy fats from sources like olive oil, nuts, avocados, and fish. They are satisfying and sustainable over the long term. This pattern describes the traditional diets of many populations with high life expectancy and low rates of chronic disease. The Mediterranean diet is the most famous example, but similar patterns appear in parts of Asia, in traditional Scandinavian diets, and in other regions where people eat locally grown whole foods rather than industrially processed products. The specific foods differ: olive oil in Greece, fish in Japan, fermented vegetables in Korea, but the underlying principles are consistent. What makes these patterns work? Several mechanisms likely contribute. Whole foods provide fiber, which feeds beneficial gut bacteria, slows glucose absorption, and promotes satiety. They provide phytonutrients, compounds produced by plants that have various beneficial effects in the body, including anti-inflammatory and antioxidant activity. They provide a matrix of nutrients that work together in ways that isolated supplements cannot replicate. And they tend to be less calorie-dense than processed foods, making it easier to maintain healthy body composition without conscious restriction. The processed foods that dominate modern diets lack these characteristics. They are typically low in fiber and phytonutrients, high in added sugars and refined grains, and formulated to be hyperpalatable, easy to overconsume without feeling satisfied. They promote rapid glucose absorption, spike insulin, and may contribute to the metabolic dysfunction that underlies many chronic diseases. This is not to suggest that processed foods must be avoided entirely. Very few people eat a perfect diet, and the pursuit of perfection often creates more stress than it solves. But understanding the difference between whole foods and processed foods provides a useful framework for making daily choices. When most of what you eat comes from sources that are close to their natural state, vegetables, fruits, whole grains, legumes, nuts, seeds, minimally processed animal products, your diet will likely support healthy aging regardless of which specific whole foods you choose. Protein deserves special attention in the context of aging. As people get older, they tend to become less responsive to the signals that stimulate muscle protein synthesis. This phenomenon, sometimes called anabolic resistance, means that older adults need more protein per meal to achieve the same muscle-building response that younger adults get from smaller amounts. Spreading protein intake across meals rather than concentrating it in one meal may also help, as the body's capacity to use protein for muscle synthesis appears limited at any single sitting. Good sources of protein include animal products if you consume them, meat, poultry, fish, eggs, dairy, as well as plant sources like legumes, soy foods, nuts, and seeds. The key is simply ensuring adequate intake, which for most older adults means including a source of protein at each meal rather than relying on carbohydrates alone. The hydration factor. Water is so fundamental to life that its importance is easy to overlook. Every cell in your body requires water to function. Blood is mostly water, carrying oxygen and nutrients to tissues and removing waste products. Digestion depends on water. Joints are lubricated by fluids that are mostly water. Body temperature is regulated through sweat, which is water. Cognitive function requires adequate hydration. The list could continue for pages. As people age, the mechanisms that maintain hydration become less reliable. The sensation of thirst diminishes, so you may not feel thirsty even when your body needs water. Kidney function changes, affecting the body's ability to conserve water when intake is low. Medications, common among older adults, can increase fluid loss. The result is that chronic mild dehydration becomes more common with age and may contribute to various health problems without being recognized as a cause. The consequences of even mild dehydration are meaningful. Cognitive performance declines, with attention, memory, and reaction time all affected. Physical performance suffers, with reduced endurance and strength. Constipation becomes more likely. Kidney stone risk increases. Urinary tract infections become more common. Blood pressure regulation can be affected. Energy levels drop. Addressing hydration does not require complicated protocols or expensive products. Plain water is excellent and usually the best choice. The amount needed varies by individual based on body size, activity level, climate, and other factors. But a general target of 6 to 8 cups per day is reasonable for most people. More may be needed in hot weather or during physical activity. The color of urine provides a practical guide. Pale yellow generally indicates good hydration. Dark yellow suggests a need for more fluids. Completely clear may indicate overhydration, which is rarely a problem for healthy adults but can be excessive. Foods also contribute to hydration. Many fruits and vegetables have high water content and count toward total fluid intake. Soups and broths provide fluid along with nutrients. Herbal teas are hydrating and can be consumed throughout the day without the caffeine that may act as a diuretic in sensitive individuals. The key is simply making hydration a consistent part of daily routine rather than an afterthought. having water available and visible, drinking a glass with each meal, and paying attention to urine color are simple practices that maintain this fundamental aspect of health. The restorative power of sleep. Sleep occupies roughly 1/3 of human life, a fact that would be astonishing if it were not so familiar. Why would evolution design organisms that must spend 1/3 of their existence unconscious and vulnerable? The answer is that sleep serves functions so essential they cannot be accomplished during waking hours. During sleep, the brain performs critical maintenance. It clears out metabolic waste products that accumulate during waking hours. It consolidates memories, transferring information from short-term storage to long-term storage and integrating new learning with existing knowledge. It processes emotions, helping to regulate mood and reduce the emotional charge of stressful experiences. It prepares for the next day's cognitive demands. The rest of the body also uses sleep for restoration. Growth hormone, important for tissue repair and maintenance, is released primarily during deep sleep. The cardiovascular system slows down, reducing stress on the heart and blood vessels. The immune system releases proteins that help fight inflammation and infection. Metabolic processes shift, with changes in hormone levels that affect appetite and energy regulation. Given these functions, it is not surprising that poor sleep is associated with a wide range of negative health outcomes. Short sleep duration and poor sleep quality are linked to increased risk of cardiovascular disease, metabolic dysfunction, cognitive decline, and premature mortality from all causes. The relationships are consistent across many studies and populations, and they persist after accounting for other factors that might explain them. Sleep changes with age, and some of these changes are normal. Older adults typically spend less time in deep sleep, wake more frequently during the night, and may go to bed earlier and wake earlier than they did when younger. Total sleep time often decreases slightly. These changes are part of normal aging and do not necessarily indicate a problem. What is not normal is accepting chronic poor sleep as inevitable. Many of the factors that disrupt sleep are modifiable. Light exposure matters enormously. Bright light in the morning helps set the circadian clock, while avoiding bright screens and artificial light in the evening supports melatonin production. Temperature affects sleep quality, with cooler environments generally supporting better sleep. Noise and other environmental disturbances can be managed. Caffeine and alcohol, both of which disrupt sleep architecture even when they do not prevent sleep, can be limited, particularly in the hours before bed. Consistency is perhaps the most powerful sleep intervention. Going to bed and waking at roughly the same times each day, including weekends, strengthens the circadian rhythm and makes sleep more efficient. A regular wind-down routine signals to your body that sleep is coming and allows the nervous system to shift from daytime activation to nighttime rest. If sleep problems persist despite good habits, medical evaluation is appropriate. Sleep apnea, restless leg syndrome, and other conditions become more common with age and can be treated effectively. There is no virtue in suffering through poor sleep when effective treatments are available. The nervous system and stress. The human nervous system evolved to handle acute threats, the sudden appearance of a predator, a confrontation with an enemy, a physical danger requiring immediate action. In these situations, the stress response is exactly what you want. It mobilizes energy, increases heart rate and blood pressure, sharpens senses, and prepares the body for action. When the threat passes, the system returns to baseline, and the body recovers. The problem in modern life is not acute stress, but chronic stress, the low-grade but persistent activation of stress pathways that never fully shut off. Financial worries, work pressures, relationship difficulties, health concerns, and the constant stream of disturbing news can keep the stress response activated indefinitely. The system was not designed for this. It is like keeping a car engine running at high RPM constantly. Eventually, something wears out. Chronic stress affects the body in multiple ways. It keeps stress hormones like cortisol elevated, which disrupts metabolism, promotes fat storage, and impairs immune function. It maintains inflammation at levels higher than healthy. It interferes with sleep, which then compounds all the other effects. It can lead to behaviors that further undermine health: poor food choices, reduced physical activity, increased alcohol or tobacco use. The relationship between stress and aging appears to operate at the cellular level as well. Chronic stress is associated with shorter telomeres, the protective caps on chromosomes mentioned earlier. It may accelerate the accumulation of cellular damage that drives aging. The mechanisms are not fully understood, but the pattern is consistent across many studies. Addressing stress does not mean eliminating it entirely. A life without any challenge or demand is not realistic or desirable. The goal is to prevent stress from becoming chronic and to ensure adequate recovery between stressful periods. This requires both reducing unnecessary sources of stress where possible and building resilience to handle the stress that remains. Physical activity is one of the most effective stress management tools available. Exercise reduces stress hormone levels, improves mood, and provides a healthy outlet for the physical activation that stress creates. Even a short walk can shift the nervous system from stress mode toward relaxation. Social connection matters enormously. Humans are social animals, and isolation is inherently stressful. Spending time with people you trust, sharing concerns, and receiving support buffers the effects of stress. This does not require a large social network. A few close relationships provide more protection than many superficial ones. Practices that activate the relaxation response, the physiological opposite of the stress response, can be learned and used regularly. Deep breathing, meditation, time in nature, gentle movement, and engaging in absorbing activities all shift the nervous system toward rest and recovery. The specific practice matters less than the regular use of some practice. Perhaps most importantly, the way you think about stress influences its effects. Viewing stress as a challenge to be met rather than a threat to be feared changes the physiological response. The same situation, a demanding project, a difficult conversation, can produce very different stress responses depending on whether you approach it with confidence or dread. Cultivating this shift in perspective is not about positive thinking or denying difficulties. It is about recognizing that you have faced challenges before and have resources to face them again. Social connection as biological need. The tendency to think of health in purely individual terms, what I eat, how I move, whether I sleep, obscures one of the most powerful influences on how we age. That influences other people. The quality and quantity of your social connections predict health outcomes with a consistency that rivals smoking, physical activity, and other established risk factors. The research is remarkably robust. People with stronger social relationships have lower mortality risk than those with weaker relationships, regardless of age, sex, or initial health status. The effect is comparable to quitting smoking and exceeds many other risk factors. Socially isolated individuals have higher rates of cardiovascular disease, cognitive decline, depression, and infectious illness. They recover more slowly from illness and surgery. Why would something as intangible as social connection have such profound biological effects? Several mechanisms likely contribute. Social support buffers the effects of stress. Knowing you have people you can count on changes how your body responds to challenges. Social engagement provides cognitive stimulation that maintains brain function. Social relationships encourage healthy behaviors. People who are connected tend to be more physically active, eat better, and smoke less. Social connection may directly influence physiological processes, with studies showing effects on inflammation, immune function, and cardiovascular regulation. The mechanisms that link social connection to health appear to operate through both quantity and quality. Having more social connections is generally beneficial, but the quality of those connections matters enormously. A few close, supportive relationships provide more protection than many superficial or conflict-ridden ones. Marital quality predicts health outcomes independently of marital status. Relationships characterized by trust, reciprocity, and emotional support confer the greatest benefits. Maintaining social connections requires intention and effort, particularly as people age. Work relationships often fade after retirement. Friends may move away or become ill. Family structures change. The natural tendency toward reduced social engagement with age must be actively countered if social connections are to be maintained. This does not require becoming a social butterfly or forcing yourself into uncomfortable situations. It does require recognizing that social connection is not merely pleasant but necessary, a biological need like physical activity or proper nutrition. From this perspective, investing time in relationships is not a luxury or a distraction from more important health practices. It is itself a health practice, as fundamental as exercise or sleep. Simple strategies can help. Regular contact with friends and family, whether in person, by phone, or through other means, maintains connection even when schedules are busy. Shared activities, walking together, cooking together, pursuing common interests, combine social connection with other health-promoting behaviors. Community involvement, through religious organizations, volunteer work, or other groups, provide structure for regular social engagement. For those who are isolated, even starting with one regular connection, a weekly phone call with a family member, joining one group activity, can make a meaningful difference. Purpose and meaning. Humans are meaning-making creatures. We need to feel that our lives matter, that we are contributing to something beyond ourselves, that our existence has point and purpose. This need is not merely psychological. It has physiological correlates that affect health and longevity. Research on purpose in life consistently shows that people who report a strong sense of purpose live longer and have lower rates of chronic disease than those who lack purpose. They maintain physical function better as they age. They have lower rates of cognitive decline. They recover more quickly from illness and injury. The effects persist after accounting for other factors like health behaviors, socioeconomic status, and baseline health. What explains this relationship? Several mechanisms probably contribute. Purpose motivates health-promoting behaviors. People who feel their lives matter are more likely to take care of themselves. Purpose buffers stress, providing perspective that makes daily frustrations seem less overwhelming. Purpose may directly influence physiological processes, with studies showing effects on inflammation, cardiovascular function, and other systems. Purpose does not require grand achievements or world-changing work. It can be found in many places: caring for family, contributing to community, pursuing creative expression, engaging in spiritual practice, mentoring others, maintaining a garden, sharing knowledge or skills. The common element is a sense that what you do matters, that you are part of something larger than yourself, that your existence has meaning. For many people, purpose was provided by work and family responsibilities that structured daily life and provided clear roles. Retirement, children leaving home, and other life transitions can disrupt these sources of purpose, leaving a void that must be filled intentionally. This is not a problem to be solved once, but an ongoing process of discovering and rediscovering what makes life meaningful at each stage. The search for purpose is itself a purposeful activity. Trying new things, exploring interests, volunteering, connecting with others, reflecting on what matters. These are not distractions from purpose, but pathways toward it. The process of seeking meaning may be as important as finding it. The built environment. Most discussions of healthy aging focus on individual choices, what you eat, how you move, whether you sleep. This focus is understandable, but it overlooks the powerful influence of the environment in which those choices are made. Your built environment, the design of your home, neighborhood, and community shapes your behavior in ways you may not consciously recognize. Consider physical activity. Whether you walk regularly depends partly on motivation and intention, but it also depends on whether walking is convenient and pleasant. Are there sidewalks? Are destinations within walking distance? Is the route safe and attractive? Are there places to rest? These features of the built environment predict walking behavior independently of individual characteristics. Consider social connection. Whether you interact with neighbors depends partly on your social nature, but it also depends on whether your housing design encourages or discourages interaction. Porches facing the street, common areas, walkable neighborhoods. These features increase the likelihood of casual encounters that can develop into meaningful connections. Consider nutrition. Whether you eat well depends partly on knowledge and intention, but it also depends on whether healthy food is available and affordable where you live. Food deserts, areas without access to fresh, whole foods, make healthy eating difficult regardless of individual motivation. These observations have practical implications. To the extent you can influence your environment, doing so can make healthy choices easier and automatic. This might mean arranging your home so that walking shoes are visible and accessible, or keeping healthy foods visible and less healthy foods out of sight. It might mean choosing a neighborhood where walking is pleasant and destinations are reachable. It might mean participating in community efforts to improve sidewalks, parks, or food access. The goal is to make the healthy choice the easy choice. When your environment supports your intentions, maintaining healthy habits requires less willpower and conscious effort. When your environment works against you, even strong motivation can be overwhelmed by constant friction. Integration and balance. The principles discussed so far do not operate in isolation. They interact, support one another, and together create a system of health that is greater than the sum of its parts. Understanding these interactions can help you see how small changes in one area can produce benefits in multiple others. Physical activity improves metabolic health, which supports healthy body composition, which reduces strain on joints, which makes more activity possible. It also improves sleep, which reduces stress, which improves mood, which increases motivation for healthy behaviors. The effects cascade through the system. Social connection reduces stress, which improves sleep, which supports metabolic health, which maintains energy for social engagement. It also provides accountability and encouragement for healthy behaviors, which reinforces physical activity and good nutrition. Again, the effects multiply. Purpose motivates self-care, which supports all the other domains. It also provides resilience against stress and meaning that sustains effort through difficult periods. When you know why you are doing something, doing it requires less willpower. Nutrition affects energy levels, which affect physical activity, which affects sleep, which affects food choices the next day. A positive cycle in one area creates positive cycles in others. A negative cycle does the same. This interconnectedness means that you do not need to perfect every domain simultaneously. Improving any single area creates benefits that spill over into others. A focus on better sleep may lead to more energy for walking. More walking may reduce stress and improve mood. Better mood may make social connection easier. Social connection may provide accountability for nutrition choices. The entry point matters less than the commitment to begin. It also means that balance matters more than intensity. Pushing too hard in any single domain can create problems in others. Extremes of exercise without adequate recovery lead to injury and burnout. Extremes of dietary restriction can create social isolation and nutrient deficiencies. Extremes of focus on any single aspect of health can crowd out attention to others. The goal is not maximum performance in any area, but sustainable practice across all. The long view. Perhaps the most important principle for healthy aging is also the simplest. Take the long view. The choices you make today matter not because of their immediate effects, but because of their cumulative impact over years and decades. A single walk does not transform your health. A single healthy meal does not reverse years of poor nutrition. A single night of good sleep does not repair chronic sleep deprivation. But thousands of walks, thousands of healthy meals, thousands of good nights, these build the architecture of a long and vital life. This perspective has two important implications. The first is that perfection is not required. What matters is consistency over time, not flawless execution on any given day. Missing a walk, eating poorly, sleeping badly, these are normal parts of human life. They matter only if they become the pattern rather than the exception. The goal is to get it right most of the time, not all of the time. The second implication is that small changes, sustained over long periods, produce meaningful results. Increasing your daily walk by 10 minutes, adding 1 serving of vegetables to your meals, going to bed 15 minutes earlier, these modest adjustments, maintained over years, shift the trajectory of aging in measurable ways. The effects are not dramatic in the short term, which is why they are easy to dismiss. But they accumulate in ways that become visible only in retrospect. When you compare yourself not to where you were yesterday, but to where you would have been without them. This is the quiet work of healthy aging. It does not make headlines or generate excitement. It does not promise transformation or guarantee results. It simply offers a path, a way of living that supports the body's natural capacity for maintenance and repair, that respects the interconnected systems that keep us functioning, that acknowledges both the power and the limits of individual choice. It is not the path of least resistance, but it is a path that almost anyone can walk, one step at a time, for as long as they are able. And that, perhaps, is the deepest truth about aging. It happens whether we attend to it or not. The question is not whether we will age, but how, with what quality, what vitality, what connection to life and to others. The choices are ours to make, not once but daily, in the small decisions that accumulate into the shape of a life. There is no guarantee of outcome, no certainty that any particular practice will extend our years or preserve our function. But there is good reason to believe that the effort matters, that how we live influences how we age, and that the architecture of a long life is built, day by day, from materials we choose. The architecture of a long life is not built in a single day, from a single blueprint, with a single material. It is built slowly, quietly, from thousands of small choices that accumulate into something substantial, something that can support you when the winds shift and the seasons change. The only question worth asking is whether you are placing those bricks with intention, or leaving them scattered for time to scatter further. We would be honored to hear what you are building, what practices, what rhythms, what small consistencies are shaping your own later years. Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you found something useful here, you know where to find more. There is always more to learn. This is the Longevity Library. Listen, learn, and live longer.